Hi everyone, welcome to part one of a show I first put on in 2018. My musical journey from playing in folk clubs, floor spots as a young teenager, ending up in a band in London for about 8 years, a rock band, and then meeting up with Phil, Albert Hall, all those sorts of things. It's in two halves, and I'll do the second half of the show later in the week. Go away from my window, leave at your own chosen speed. I'm not the one you want, babe. I am not the one you need. You say you're looking for someone to pick you up each time you fall, to gather flowers constantly and come each time you call. Someone who died for you and all, but it ain't me, babe. No, 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 it ain't me, babe. It ain't me you're looking for. I heard the freewheeling Bob Dylan album when I was about 14, living in Exmouth. My family had moved rather a lot when I was a kid, so I suppose in some ways I was a bit isolated. You never grow up with a group of friends, and strategies for getting on with people are fooling around and sport. So when I heard the guitar being played, that was my passport really. But this way of playing, this particular finger picking style, me and Paul Downs and some others at Exmouth School, it was a mystery how it was put together. And then gradually we realised, and I mentioned this in my tutorial on fingerpicking, it's all based upon rocking your thumb between 6 and 4. We slowed the records down, and then you add 3, 6, 4, 6, 3, 4. And then 2, 6, 3, 4, 2. And then when you speed it up, suddenly the world of song opens, and it wasn't about learning a lot of chords and songs, it was about learning how to fingerpick. And then you can do, I am just a poor boy, though my story's seldom told, or it's a lesson too late for the learning, or when sadness fills your heart, and sorrow hides the longing to be free. There were so many singer-songwriters in those days playing that particular style, And if you could learn gloomy songs in Exmouth at that time, every summer the town was awash with Scandinavian students between the ages of 16 and 18. And I don't know what it is about Swedes who like gloomy songs, But we got invited to play at all these beach parties and barbecues, just through learning this stuff, So many songs, Ralph McTell, Paul Simon, all thanks to the freewheeling Bob Dylan album. Well, it ain't no use to sit and wonder why. I could go on and on and on, But you get the general point. Go lightly from the ledge, babe. Everything inside made of stone. There's nothing in here moving, and anyway I'm not alone. You say you're looking for someone, never weak but always strong, to protect you and defend you, whether you were right or wrong. Someone who died for you and all, but it ain't me, babe. No, 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 it ain't me, babe. It ain't me you're looking for. All thanks to Bob. So at that time, the folk clubs, when we were 14, 15 and 16, were being run by people only maybe 8 years older than us. In fact, that's the generation that seemed to have produced the Rusbys and the Lakemans and all that, like all the Bellowhead guys. That first generation of postgraduates and young in their early 20s people who were running folk clubs, you know, they were young enough to hang out with and to sort of stay up late and drink and party with. We were underage, but it was a social life as much as it was a musical life, and we were absolutely drawn into it. Our parents didn't have a clue what we were getting up to, you know. We learned to play this music to get away from them as much as to hang out with them. You know, now I drive my son to gigs and help set up his drum kit, you know, a drum kit. Things have changed really. So they were very, very kind, particularly in Exmouth, about giving us floor spots, and we would start the evening up. And I was encouraged to write my first songs, you know, in Exmouth Folk Club. It used to run twice a week, on Wednesday night and on Sunday. And on Wednesdays it was a wash with foreign language students, and then on Sunday it was back to the normal folk crowd. And so this is my first ever offering, you know, heavily influenced by Bob Dylan, whispering in my ear, you know, "Hey kid, why don't you get on a train, baby?" I thought The Girl from the North Country was about Biddeford, you know. But I could fingerpick. So this is my first ever song. Some of you have seen this before, I'm sure, but I want you to finish off the last line. I'm only 15 when I'm doing this. It's a bit predictable. If I had a harmonica, I would probably put it on and blow away. Now I'm gonna tell you a, can't hear you, story. It just might ease my, what have we had, pain, mind. I'm not trying to be, hurtin'. It's a brand new verb I made up. Hurtin'. I'm not trying to be unkind, yeah, but I'm catching the first train in the morning, and I'm leaving you behind. Please say you understand. Babe, obviously. Babe, Dylan influence, it just might ease my mind. You know those summer days, they are a calling. I want to live without a, what do you reckon, care. Someone one night in Yorkshire shouted dog. I said, what? He said, I couldn't live without me whippets on, you know, live without a dog, live without a care. I'm going to wake up so early in the morning, obviously, feel the dewdrops clinging to my hair, but I'm catching the first in the, oh, where were you? And I'm leaving you behind. Please say you understand, babe. It just might ease my mind. It just might ease my mind. Well, people clapped. They seemed to enjoy it. And in Exmouth at that time, in East Devon generally, there was a folk club every night of the week, as I said. And not just in pubs, but we're in teacher training colleges and universities. So in other words, if you're 15 or 16 and just starting to socialise and to misbehave, it was an environment to play on. But of course, just round the corner from me in Exmouth was the Sidmouth Folk Festival. Even then it'd been going strong. And I remember going around, I think I went on the back of my friend Bat's Norton 500 motorbike, you know, uphill, downhill. But a year before that, I went over with some friends and I missed the bus home. And I slept on the beach, as I said, I think in my fingerpicking tutorial. Slept on the beach. And the reason I missed the bus is I saw Martin Carthy and Dave Swarbrick. And the world changed. I didn't realise that so many of these songs that Dylan had been playing and I'd been learning had British roots to them, you know, the Come All Ye, the Gather Round songs, you know. He'd even used Lord Franklin for the basis of a song called Bob Dylan's Dream. So this was my music, this is traditional music, and the the Penguin Book of English Folk Songs, in particular. I got that wrong one night. Called it the English Book of Penguin Songs, which is a bit bizarre. All about fish in the Antarctic, or the Antarctic. So the Penguin Book of English Folk Songs had some amazing songs in it, and Martin Carthy had done arrangements of some of them. And I sat there at the beach store, absolutely entranced by the guitar playing and the fiddle playing as well, but particularly the guitar playing, a whole different way of playing the guitar, because all of that American singer-songwriter stuff was definitely either major or minor chords, you know, the thirds, the major or minor thirds, very, very strong, you know, but this stuff was different. It sounded more ancient. And Martin in particular was using lots of tunings, and especially this one, D-A-G, Dad, D-A-D-G-A-D, Dadgad. It has a more sort of ancient, almost, not Celtic, but more modal, more European. And in these songs, he wasn't occupying the song in the way that Dylan was. He wasn't the narrator. He was, as I say, the sailor or the soldier. He was channeling these words that have come down to us over the generations. And I completely was entranced. I brought, I think, but two came by. And then in particular, Prince Heathen. I mean, what a record that was. Extraordinary. From the opening bars of Arthur McBride. I mean, it rewires your DNA. That sort of stuff. And if I can hit the high notes, I'll do a couple of, a little medley of two traditional songs. One of them Martin plays, and the other I think I heard Chris Foster playing, Banks of Newfoundland. I just run them together so you can hear the difference between the Dylan stuff. Come all you wild young men, and a warning take by me, never to lead your single life astray and into no bad company, as I myself have done, it being in the merry month of May, when I was pressed by a sea captain, and on board a man of war I did stray. We sailed on the ocean so wide, and our bonny, bonny flag we let fly. Let every man stand true to his gun, for the Lord... Hang on, Claire, come in and say hello, because I'll start this bot again. What? Come in and say hello, you may as well be in this show. Come and say hello. What? Come in.
What?
I'll do this little medley again. Claire's just come home from work.
Hello.
Kiss.
Did you feed all the kids?
I fed all the kids.
They've all had their dinner?
They've all had their dinner.
All of them?
This is going to go out exactly like this. Claire in her lovely blue scrubs, rather than her green.
They're a bit baggy.
No, don't start all that. Off you go.
Is that money for me?
No, leave it. Later.
Okay.
This is going to end up on the... Sorry about this, folks. I'm going to start this bit again. Off you go. We don't have time to talk now, because I'm going to do that. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, have fun.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Do you need any wine?
Oh, well, yeah, bring some wine in when you hear silence.
What do you want? White, red or rosé?
Rosé.
I'll bring you a cup of tea then.
I don't need tea. I'll start again. Close the door. Come, where was it? Oh, we sailed on the ocean so wide, and our bonny, bonny flag we let fly. Let every man stand true to his gun, for the Lord knows who must die. Oh, our decks, they were spattered with blood, and so loudly the cannons did roar, and thousands of times have I wished myself at home, and all along with my Polly on the shore. She's a tall and a slender girl, she has a dark and a roving eye, and here am I, lie bleeding on the deck, but for her sweet sake I would die. Do that again. Oh, you Western Ocean labourers, I would have you to be near. Oh, you Western Ocean labourers, I would have you to beware. When you're on board of a packet ship, no dungaree jumpers wear, but have a good monkey jacket, always at your command. Think of the cold northwesters on the banks of Newfoundland. We'll rub around and scrub around with holly, stone and sand, and bid farewell to the virgin rocks on the banks of Newfoundland. And now we're off knee up, me boys, the land is covered in snow. The tug will take our hawsers, and to New York we will go. And when we get to the Blackpool docks, the pretty girls will stand, and we'll bid farewell to the virgin rocks and the banks of Newfoundland. We'll rub around and scrub around with holly, stone and sand, and bid farewell to the virgin rocks and the banks of Newfoundland. Oh, I haven't played that for a while, so that was a bit rough and ready, it must be said. So anyway, with a smattering of a couple of bluesy songs, and with the Dylan stuff and with the traditional songs, we had a repertoire. And by we, I mean me, my friend Paul Downs, and a chap called John Evans, we called him Bat, who was a fiddler, he had a very, very fine touch. Paul was a virtuoso, still is a virtuoso guitar player. And I'd inherited a 12-string mandolin through my great uncle, and I took 4 of the strings off it, and even then I tuned the top E down to D. And we started gigging in the East Devon area. We were called Gartwain, a friend called Bob Perry. He booked us to support the Groundhogs, of all people, at Sidmouth. And also, I think we supported an early incarnation of Steel Eye Span. Yes, in fact, we did. And he called us Garwain because we couldn't think of a name. And we were quite well known on the local folk scene. We were only 16 and 17 at that time. And we had a bit of attitude, it has to be said. We were a bit full of ourselves. There was a traditional folk club in Exeter called the Jolly Porter. They were famous for not booking Paul Simon in the early 60s because he had a guitar. They were a bit hardcore, and we got offered a floor spot reluctantly by the organisers, and we did things like Roll Over Beethoven and I think possibly a David Bowie song, just to be a bit provocative. So that club as well, first met JJ, Johnny Jones from the Oyster Band, when he was at university in Exeter. So we were gigging around locally, and we even did a rather disastrous tour to Sweden. One of the young guys on the foreign language courses that we played to was a guy called Peder Broström, a real party animal, I mean a serious headbanger, Peder was. And he said, look, come over to Sweden and I'll organise you some gigs in late August. Well, I must have just finished my A-levels, so I would have been either just 18, I think. So we got the coach up to Immingham, right across country, took about 8 hours. It was an early morning ferry to Gothenburg. We had to sleep in a hut in the middle of a field of potatoes just outside the docks for the early boat, and we got on board the boat. My first experience of a smorgasbord. What we did was one of us would pay and the others would sort of sneak in and take their place, but the stewards became a bit suspicious of all this. And I think I replaced Paul and he went. And I was loading my plate with what I thought was blackberries. It turned out to be caviar, and I'd never seen caviar before. I was a bit common. And then I poured a load of cream on top of it, and the steward was looking at me. And we got kicked out eventually. We landed in Gothenburg. Soon we realised what we were in for. because as we arrived at Gothenburg docks, there was the name Strum on top of this huge block of offices. Peter's father was a shipping magnate, and they lived in the equivalent of Mayfair, Karlavägen in Stockholm. And we arrived too late for any students to be around. We arrived too late in August. He'd forgotten we were coming, or we'd forgotten to tell him. It was not the most successful tour. And even when we arrived at Gothenburg, the customs made us buy a ticket home. So that was what I was doing, armed with all these songs, with Dylan and with traditional songs and with the bluesy stuff. And then the third element in my DNA rewiring, the poet Ted Hughes, came into my life. And this is a rather extraordinary situation, really. When I was about 15, I think we were in the old fourth year, maybe the old fourth year of the school, the C stream of the grammar school, you know, the losers. And we were sitting there one day, and the teacher came and said, look, there's a creative writing course run by an organisation called the Arvin Foundation in North Devon. And would you like to go? I don't suppose any of you will, but it means 3 days out of school, and it means four nights away and 3 days away from school. Is that my wine? No. So we applied, about 4 of us, and off we went, really just to Skive. I think it would have been in April of the term year. We went just to Skive, and we came into this amazing place, this vicarage near in Beeford in North Devon, near the Tor and the Torridge rivers. And we were encouraged to wander around and to write stuff. And I'd never had a space like that in my life where I'd been that encouraged. And the guys running it, John Mote and John Fairfax, two poets. This was their first ever residential course. It's now become world famous what the Arvin Foundation do. And they encouraged me to write. I remember sitting by the river looking at the wind wrinkling the surface of the water, and I made this image about the wind trying to reach out to the pebbles to pluck them out, and they said that's really strong, and why don't you add this to that? And I was encouraged to write. And they said on the final night of the course, everybody can read what they've written through the week, and I think I sang a couple of songs or whatever. And then they said the poet Ted Hughes, who lives nearby, is going to come and read to us. And I'd known some of Hughes's stuff from school. I think the Thought Fox and the Horses. Even in the junior school, I remember hearing this poem. And into this Victorian drawing room with the logs crackling in the hearth, he stood there, and he read to us. And this charismatic guy, big, imposing Yorkshireman with a deep Yorkshire voice, something like that, you know, looked like Freddie Truman with hair flopping forward. Very powerful presence about him. And I subsequently realised he was in the midst of extraordinary tragedy even at that time. And he read these poems, English countryside poems, but they weren't cider with rosy stuff. They weren't sort of bucolic. They were nature read in tooth and claw. And we just sat there entranced, listening to this deep sonorous voice. And then afterwards we had to do our stuff, you know, the fingers reaching for the wind, and I think I sang a song, might have sang a Donovan song as well. And he came up to me when the adults were all drinking sherry and beer. He said, what's your name, son? And I said, Steve Knightley. He said, no, what's your full name? And I said, Stephen Andrew Knightley. He said, now, the Celts would say, if you gave a man your full name, he had your soul. Now then, I've got yours. That affected me, not just at the time, but subsequently. Looking back, it was like a journey to a different place. I started reading everything that Hughes had ever written. And again, like Carthy and like Dylan, it rewires you at that age. You're so open to suggestion. And I wondered for years and years whether that was his party piece for impressionable young men. And I was lucky enough to meet Michael Marpergo about 4 years ago. We're both honorary patrons of the local museum. And I was very reluctant to mention this because I said, look, can I tell you this? And I told him the story. He said, nope, I was a good friend with Ted and I've never heard that before. That was just for you. So I just was delighted. So if I can remember, I can part remember, I'll try to do this by heart, one of Hughes's poems, one of his most striking, Hawk Roosting, which has a analogy for absolutism and fascism, if you like, is extraordinary. This is Hawk Roosting. I sit in the top of the woods, in action. No falsifying dream between my hooked head and hooked feet, or in sleep rehearse perfect kills and eat. The convenience of the high trees, the air's buoyancy and the sun's ray are of advantage to me, and the earth's face upward for my inspection. My feet are locked upon the rough bark. It took all of creation to produce my foot, my each feather. Now I hold creation in my foot, or fly up and revolve it all slowly. I kill where I please, 'cause it's all mine. There is no sophistry in my body. My manners are tearing off heads, the allotment of death. For the one path of my flight is direct through the bones of the living. No arguments assert my right. The sun is behind me. Nothing has changed since I began. My eye has permitted no change. I'm going to keep things like this. So all these poems, and then in particular Crow, that I read, and you read them out loud, and they do sort of rewire you. And there's a couple of songs. I'm not saying this is poetry, but I don't think a song like this would have ever emerged but for those encounters with people like Ted Hughes, in particular. It's called Cold Frontier, and when I lived in Dorset, they kept finding these Roman weapons and remains around Maiden Castle, and I thought what it would be like for a Roman soldier 2,000 years ago to be posted to England, you know, to the Tamar, looking across and seeing a lot of Phil Beers looking back at them, you know. Hurling cholesterol across the river to ruin their marching speed. And 300 years, you know, so the Romans were there, and it must have seemed like an eternity to people. And then one day, you know, there's rumours of people on the edge of the town or the village, and one day there's an abandoned farm, and one day there's people missing, and then another day you send for civil order, you send for the police or the army, and no one comes. And then one day it all stops, and then the darkness overcomes for so many centuries. So it's funny because this present time gives you a glimpse, doesn't it, of how close we are to a breakdown of structure. So I played this song one night near the battle of the Teutoburger Forest, Teutoburger Belt in Germany, which was another border where the Germans crossed and the legions were lost in the darkness. Cold Frontier. Walk out on the ancient hills. I'll start this again. Whoa. Starts with a C. Walk out on these ancient hills. There's something under here. Reach down, let your fingers touch a blade as cold as steel. I was the man that left it there. I tried to make my home, watching over a cold frontier, 1,000 miles from Rome. And our worlds collide after all these years on a cold frontier. streets. We drain the land for houses set to last. Now all my cities and all my roads are contours beneath your grass. What of those men that we couldn't tame? We drove them far into the west. Their songs and their stories still remain. But what became of this world I left? Just the stones and the clay that the plough reveals on my cold frontier. Such a cold frontier on the Tamar and on the Tyne, on the Danube and on the Rhine, so cold. Varus, gibt mir meine Legionen zurück. A silver coin I leave for you. You can spin it in the air. On any country the coin might fall, it would always pay your fare. But it's in the faces and under the skin of all those who've worked on this land. You'll find the traces of who we've been. They lie so close to hand. And are the borders down after all these years on my cold frontier? Such a cold, cold frontier. Cold frontier. So, I wrote a song about maybe 15 years ago called Undertow. And it sort of fits in this story because looking back, it was my hometown song, really. People come to these West Country towns and they only really see the romance and glamour of a place like Seaford or Lowestoft. No, but you know, they come in the summer and they don't realise in the winter it can be a different environment. And I remember, I think might have been my niece told me about a young guy who was just left on the doorstep of a hospital in Exmouth, having had an overdose. And there is a problem, there is a dark side to seaside towns. And even before the present stuff started kicking off, you know, there was a crisis of poverty and employment. And looking back, I realised that this song called Undertow, so it's almost like my nieces and nephews' generation that I'm singing about. You know, they're getting up to stuff and they're dreaming of escape. Finding themselves back. So this is Undertow, and there's a couple of inaccuracies in it. It mentions lying in the dunes. Well, the dunes aren't there anymore in Exmouth. They got washed away by the westerlies southerly storms about 5 years ago now. Stole a car by the docks. It's the docks, not the ducks. It's amazing what people hear. Caught in a yard at the back of a spa. That's a spa, the grocers, and not a spa where you take the waters. It would make nonsense of the song had it been that. And I know he's hiring boards on the beach. Someone did point out to me that with a tidal range and fall of about 15 feet, it's too dangerous to surf. You know, I do get health and safety corrections coming into some of these songs. This is Undertow. I was born in a Devonshire seaside town 21 years ago. Failed at school, broken home, you know those scars will show. But my girl Amy's just 19. She wants to be a nurse. She says we need skills, and if we don't leave, we'll end up somewhere worse. We talk about America, we dream of Spain. Don't want another winter here in this English rain. We long for Australia, we'll catch waves all day. You know I was born here, no way I'll stay. No way I'll stay. And when summer comes round, I'll be found working on along the beach. I'm hiring boards, putting up chairs. You gotta keep dreams in reach. Staring at the stars, Amy and me, soaking up the sun-warmed ground, or lying in the dunes, sand in her hair. Look at the moon turn round. We talk about America, we dream of Spain. Don't want another winter here in this English rain. We long for Australia, we'll catch waves all day. You know we were born here, no way we'll stay. No way we'll stay. And then one dark night, my best friend stole a car by the docks. I wish he had seen the London plates, never would have forced the locks. Hit the M5 110, laughing as the clock span around. He left it burning in a cliff-top field, lit his way to town. He was almost home, but they were waiting either end of his road. He was trapped in a yard at the back of a spot where the vans and the lorries unload. I heard sirens, I saw the flashing lights. They found him left dead. I saw Amy at the A&E working on nights, through the glass door shaking her head. I would talk about America, these dreams of Spain. Have we got another winter now in this English rain? Oh, Australia, we'll never catch waves this way. You say you were born here, maybe you'll stay. Oh, America, can't you learn to trade, she said. We'll make some money, we could have it made. Oh, Australia, how I long to go. But there's another winter now in this undertow. In the undertow. From Weymouth round to Sidmouth, and Sidmouth the next month. Dawlish and Teignmouth and Torbay, and all around the shoreline of England. So many dreams, so many plans of leaving, but the tide turns, yeah. Are you trapped? Are you trapped toe. So when all my friends passed their A-levels and buggered off, I was sort of left at the age of 18. I retook A-levels at Exeter College, and my social life really was Withycombe Rugby Club and occasionally hooking up with friends on a Saturday night at the Folk Club. But Paul had gone, Phil had gone. Phil, by the way, when Gawain were touring, Phil was in another band called Odd Folk on the other side of the estuary, Phil and Colin Wilson. And they were a bit more likeable, I think, not so obnoxious as us. I think they were the mum's favourites. They wore matching jumpers and stuff like that. But Phil from Odd Folk had teamed up with Paul from Gawain, and they were off gigging, maybe at the age of 19 or 20, 21. And as I say, I hung about in Exmouth for a while, played rugby, did not so much music. And this is my leaving Exmouth song, It's called Sit You Down. It's one of the family favourite songs. In fact, the You Left an Empty Space and It Still Remains is on my dad's grave in Exmouth as an inscription. This was my mum's favourite song, Sit You Down. And I think it's when I first realised I could do this thing. I had the grasp of songwriting, was this song. And when you're young and ambitious like that, and you think, you're going to learn songs, end up in a band or something like that, you think that you're going to measure your success by the distance you put from where you've arrived and where you're from. That classic American story, isn't it? You're from some small town in Missouri and you end up in Hollywood, and that's how you measure your progress. But with Phil and I, the music has brought us back home again, via Coventry and Brighton and London and then Dorset. For me, I'm now back, I'm half a mile from the River Exe. All my family live up and down the River Exe. Right opposite me, as I looked, if I could look through these walls, I would see Phil Beer a mile and a half away in Exminster in his parents' old house. So in a way, our music has brought us back, but not with any sense of regret, not with a sense of having not succeeded, but I think with a sense of completeness, really. So I'll finish up with a song that's my hometown song. As I say, there is a PayPal honesty box. Please, I'm so grateful for the donations I get. They trickle in and it makes a real difference. I don't know how long this lockdown is going to last for. Who knows, but this is another way of connecting with people. And I'm actually enjoying it. I'm enjoying this process. Learning new skills, learning how to cross-post. This is my glass of wine, I hope. Let me just see. Is it?
Oh no, I was going to go for a run.
Okay, you go for a run.
Are you in the middle of it?
Yeah, I am. I'm just doing my final song. Off you go for a run.
Okay, see you later. I'll get you a glass of wine or a gin tonic after.
I'll have done by then. Off you go for a run.
Well, it might be a long time.
Yeah, well, I'll be done by then.
How long will you know? How will you know how long I'm going to be? To know that you'll be done by then.
Well, this is only 5 minutes and then the show's over.
Well, I'm running for longer than 5 minutes.
Good, so I'll see you inside later.
Well, that went well. Have a nice run, darling.
You have a nice run, darling. I'm not going to edit this out. So this is my hometown song, as it is my mum's favourite. And funny story, when my nephew Tom was looking for secondary schools to go to, he went to look around Isker. And I went with my mum and we went around Isker, which is quite well equipped for the arts and performing. She looked at the facilities, the studios and the stage and the instruments and all of the rehearsal spaces. And she got increasingly sad, and this is just after we'd played the Royal Albert Hall, by the way, and she sighed as we left. And I said, "What is it, Mum?" She said, "Oh, Steve, I just think what you might have achieved had you had all this." Great. So I'll finish up this half with this one. See you later in the week. Sit you down. You used to sing at the break of day, through long hours the song wouldn't fade away. Your eyes were bright and your voice grew stronger. You couldn't stay at home any longer. Now you search for the ones with the means to pay. Some of us have never left this town. We looked around a while and we settled down. We built our lives with those around us, but you left before you really found us. And if the dreams that you weave ever come unwound, sit you down at the journey's end. The day has fled and you're with your friends. On every side you'll find your own. Sit you down and welcome home. You walk with those that barely know your name, and the sea of laughing faces sounds the same. But don't live and laugh with strangers too long. Turn your steps back where you came from. You left an empty space and it still remains. Sit you down at the journey's end. The day has fled and you're with your friends. On every side you'll find your own. Sit you down and welcome home. Sit you down and welcome try singing that. Sit you down. Come on, a bit louder. Sit you down. There's a harmony for you. Sit you sit you down. Let's sing together. Sit you down. Sit you down. So stay safe and well, you and yours, over the next few days, and I'll catch up with you later in the week.